If you were born between the late 90s and early 2000s, I think it's a good guess to say that the two most remarkable FPS you've played were Call of Duty Black Ops 2 and Battlefield 3. Since not only were they released in your teens, meaning you had plenty of time and friends to play them, but they are also games that left an impact on the gaming industry. Black Ops 2 was one of the first games in the Call of Duty franchise to mess around with the concept of futuristic war. Since the game was released in 2012, but the game's setting was occurring in the insane future of 2025. Well, the game brought a lot of interesting kill streaks that were fresh and really creative, and with maps that were familiar enough to our reality, but with some minor improvements considering it's a little bit in the future. That was the amazing thing about its setting. Yes, it's in the future, but only for 13 years, so they could mess around predicting and inventing warfare advancements. But was still strained by the fact that it wasn't a big time gap, ensuring they still kept close to reality. And in regards to Battlefield 3, not only were they already famous for the big scale war they provided, with lobbies up to 32 to 64 players, but Battlefield 3 looked amazing back in the day, and was regarded as one of the most realistic graphics. So the game sold the feeling of being in a war, with vehicles, different classes that specialized in something, like medics and anti-vehicle, large lobbies, realistic graphics, explosions and sound, and with a destructible environment to be the cherry on top. I mean, it feels weird opening the video talking about other game franchises that are still going when I'm trying to convince you that Delta Force is good. Like, if those franchises are really good, why don't I just play them? Let me be honest, if you still enjoy the newest games of those franchises, that's all fine. My real problem nowadays is that their design doesn't really fit my playstyle. I'm not an FPS player. If I play an FPS, it's always with friends. I think they are way more fun when you can coordinate attacks, pushes and positions, so playing with friends allows each one of us to feel relevant, even if unskillful in the gunplay. But we are all adults now, we don't have that much time nowadays, and even with income, money is way tighter, since all of us have bills, dreams and responsibilities that are priorities in our financial plans. And with a new game of Call of Duty or Battlefield releasing almost every single year, it's really hard to commit $60 to them, especially when some of them are released with questionable qualities and design. So wouldn't it be nice if a game captured the same feeling we used to have back in the days playing Black Ops 2 and Battlefield 3, and, better yet, was free, so inviting friends to play is way less stressful, since no one has to commit money to a game they might not enjoy. I guess you are expecting an answer. I thought you could already tell which game it is. Delta Force, my beloved. Delta Force is an FPS with two major modes of gameplay. One is Operations, a mode heavily inspired by Escape from Tarkov, where your focus is to drop into a map, collect the most amount of loot you can, and then extract. I'm not going to talk about this mode for the rest of the video, so the only recommendation I'm going to give to you is, if Tarkov is expensive for you and you are not sure you would enjoy it, play Operations before. The game is really similar in their design, they differ only in execution. The other one is Warfare, and is the one I'm going to focus since it's the one that resembles Call of Duty and Battlefield the most. Let's start with the basics. Matches on Warfare are centered around capturing an objective. There's two types, King of the Hill and Attack and Defend. King of the Hill is similar to Conquest in Battlefield 3, where each team tries to capture the most amount of bases since holding them gives points. Attack and Defend centers around one team, always advancing and capturing more flags, while the defending team tries to kill enough of the attacking forces to the point where their reinforcements ends. Both matches occur in lobbies with up to 64 players, 32 for each team. Now, in each team, you are also subdivided into squads of 4 players, with each player being able to pick a role, Assault, Support, Engineer and Recon, and inside its role, select one of the two operators. By now, if you play Battlefield, you can already point out the similarities. 64-player lobbies, squad of 4 players, heavily centered around objectives, and players being able to choose which role they want to play. And yes, the roles are similar. Assault is your man when it comes to assault rifles and killing the most amount of enemies. Support is the medic class, being able to heal and buff allies. Engineer is the one to deal with vehicles, either by destroying the ones from the enemy or repairing the ones from your team. And lastly, Recon, the classic sniper that allows to greatly point out enemy locations. But here's where the mix with Call of Duty comes in. Not only do you have kill strikes, where once you reach a certain amount of points you can call in airstrikes, universal respawn beacons and vehicles, but the operators works more similar to what you might have seen in different Call of Duty games. Each one has 2 abilities, a passive and an exclusive grenade, since you cannot change them. Sure, those 2 games separately are pretty good, But does mixing them together guarantees a good game? Let's analyze it a little bit deeper. First, because the game is free to play, even though lobbies have up to 64 players, there's hardly downtime when searching for matches. This is a problem with some older Battlefield titles, because even if those games are now more accessible because people had the time to upgrade their PCs and the game is cheaper, the overall feeling of war is a little bit diminished, since most servers won't fill up to the player capacity, and you will probably play with repeated players, and some of them are more experienced. After all, most players who are still playing these 3 to 4 year old games are the ones more dedicated to it. So you can see a little barrier of entry. Even if your friends decide to buy an older Battlefield during a sale, you probably won't have the best time when starting to play. Also, because the game is free, a friend can always start playing later, as losing a sale and then having to pay full price to play won't be a problem. With a high population, the desire to play a war simulator comes to fruition. Since 64-player lobbies become total madness, with bullets always flying past you, corpses layering the entire floor, and screens and explosions everywhere. And because lobbies have 64 players, it also allows developers to make bigger maps, working in harmony with this desire of pushing forward with your comrades. Centering the game around objectives is pretty important in my opinion. Yes, having 64 players and a big map is cool, but if everyone just ran anywhere they wanted, encountering enemies would be pretty rare. So by having objectives to attack and defend, you force players to focus their trajectory and positioning around set points, creating a concentration of players which, by consequence, creates conflict and interesting gunplay. And, for defenders, since killing enemies is your priority, it also encourages them to play more aggressively and hunt down players to lower enemy lives. So this creates a better flow of gameplay, since just camping at a catcher's site is not that effective. But you might be wondering, well, if I suck at an FPS, why would I play a game like this? Isn't there so many players that I won't be able to understand what is going on and just keep dying? Won't I just be shot from everywhere while not having the necessary skills to kill enemies? Well, the answer to this is the different classes, which will allow you to perform different actions during a match. Yes, if you are good at shooting, pick the Assault class. It will give you tons of movement and a decent selection of assault rifles to deal with enemies at close and medium range, and tools and explosives that center around killing enemies. But if you are lacking in skills, you can select one of the other 3 classes. Support, being the medic, allows you to focus on healing allies, putting medkits in strategic places, and reviving allies faster. And that's pretty helpful, since there are hardly any other sources of healing in the game, so having a good selection of medics on your team can help wonders. And since maps are big, sometimes reviving can save you a lot of time walking back, so even if you're not good at killing enemies, just the fact that you are allowing your allies to have more uptime in combat can make a huge difference. Recon is another good example, since it is one with the sniper, allowing you to get to high ground and ping enemy locations, and in war, information is important. Also, it is a class that has respawn beacons, allowing only you and the other players on your squad to revive at it. This is one of my favorite things to do. My playstyle is generally oriented towards going around the enemy's front lines and killing them from where they least expect, and since I'm rushing and getting to these advantageous positions, placing a respawn beacon so that my entire squad can also take advantage leads to an interesting risk and reward situation where I'm always putting myself in more danger by fastly advancing towards objectives, but with the reward of, if done correctly, bringing my entire squad with me. And lastly is Engineer, which is similar to Assault in its weapon selection, bolstering a decent selection of assault rifles and light machine guns, but also possessing rocket launchers to better deal with armored vehicles. Yes, you might be bad at aiming at enemies, but even a complete noob probably won't miss a gigantic fucking tank. Also, just by being alive in any of the classes allows for allies to respawn at you. So if you are so scared and lacking the confidence to put yourself on the front line, playing defensively and staying back and behind cover can help a lot. Since again, the bigger the map, the more your teammates would have had to walk had you not stayed alive. But I assure you, even if you are a bad player, the recoil on the weapons is not that punishing. With the insane amount of players, even if you miss your shots, they might end up hitting a different enemy. And even if you don't kill enemies, just by dealing damage, you are already assisting the dozens of other players shooting at the same general direction. Now, I've mentioned the operators, and they are a nice addition to the formula since each of them possesses unique traits and abilities, allowing you to select one that fits your playstyle. Let me explain with simple examples. Stinger and Toxic, the support operators. Stinger is focused on healing and reviving. Its special ability is a healing pistol that can heal multiple targets at once. If it shoots its own smoke grenade with it, it creates a healing cloud. Its base ability is a smoke screen, which covers a vast area with a fake cloud, enabling an easier revive of allies since the enemies can't see you. And its passive allows you to revive allies with more health. Toxic, on the other hand, is way more aggressive, with its base ability being an AoE adrenaline buff, which heals everyone in proximity to her, giving them better weapon handling and reducing flinch when taking damage. Also, her passive allows squad mates to start healing sooner and use consumables faster. Her special ability is a swarm that gives an adrenaline boost to every ally it comes in contact with, and if it hits an enemy, reduces their maximum health and lowers their hearing and visibility, something that her grenade also does. So, as you can see, she is less focused on dedicating healing and reviving, instead focusing more on giving strong buffs and debuffs, allowing her to dedicate herself more to playing aggressively. The same can be said for other operators, such as the assault ones. While D-Wolf has a base ability of a triple blaster, allowing him to deal insane damage in a closed space, as it works just like a grenade, its special ability is a motorized exoskeleton, gaining a lot of movement speed for 12 seconds and knocking back enemies it comes in contact with. On the other hand, Viron, its base ability is a dash that recovers every 15 seconds or when you kill an enemy, and that also knocks enemies if he dashes into them. But its special ability is a grenade of compressed air that knocks enemies down, leaving them vulnerable. So the way you play with them changes a lot. D-Wolf has better zoning because of the volley of explosive it has, and allows for really aggressive playstyle once its special ability is up. While Viron is always playing more aggressively, since it has a dash that is constantly refreshing, and is only able to better zone once its special ability charges up. We could explore this deeper, but because of this hero shooter design, I think it's more fun for you to experiment with them and discover by yourself the strengths and weaknesses of each character, and what type of weapon synergizes better with them. I mean, all of this is still pretty subjective, since I've seen Stinger players that play defensively and only stay back healing and reviving, and some that play on the front line, utilizing their exclusive SMG to its full potential in close quarters, and allowing for the revive of other aggressive teammates, strengthening your push since you are raising back your army of undead in the front line. Now, allow me to complain a little bit. I swear it's nothing big, but I don't like the operators. It feels like they are badly balanced, with some performing way better than the others. And that stems from the fact that the same operators you use in warfare are also used in operations. So basically, they have to balance and design operators around the fact they are going to be used in these 32v32 matches, but also in the game mode where your entire focus is playing more solo, with looting and extraction being the focus. I think this limits what they can do with the characters, since some of them feel like their abilities don't work that well in these crowded maps. But when I look from the lenses of a looter shooter, they make way more sense. This doesn't hinder the game that much nowadays, but it leaves me a little skeptical about the future, since I think the operators can really bring a lot to the table for your desired playstyle. But if the developers have to balance around the fact that every ability has to make sense for both game modes, I fear they might make generic and simple abilities, rather than making ones that focus and delivers into a single game mode. But the game is still on early access, so they might change some things around for the operators. Also, as a side complaint, I really dislike that the grenades are locked to the operators. It should be something that you could select and switch inside your class, and not be restricted to your operator. Some have shitty grenades while possessing some of my favorite abilities, and this bothers me. But to not finish on a bad note when talking about operators, I do have to say their abilities have interesting designs. Remember when I said that Black Ops 2 was one of the better Call of Duty games to nail the theme of futuristic war? I think the same can be said for Delta Force. When I look into the operator's design, I feel like it's really reminiscent of the design the killstreaks in BO2 worked. I mean, it also makes somewhat sense. BO2 was designed around the year of 2025, and Delta Force seems to be aiming for a setting in the current date. So yeah, also around the year of 2025. The difference is that when BO2 launched, that was the future. For Delta Force, this is the present. We have healing pistols that track allies, smokescreen drones, wrist-equipped grenade launchers, swarm insect drones, exoskeletons, guided drone strikes, special munitions for bows, tracking devices, and so on. Those are not something you would normally imagine when thinking of war, but in this day and age, it also doesn't look like something you'd be surprised if it came up on the news. I think what helps bring the feeling of familiarity is the map designs. They don't look futuristic. We have coastal maps being invaded by boats, we have forest maps with tons of trenches, generic Middle Eastern city conceptualized by Americans, generic city, and so on. Okay, I said a lot of generic terms, and yes, I don't think the maps are anything special. But they have good designs, positioning-wise, so it always feels good attacking or defending. And the fact they are known ambients helps create a feeling of nostalgia for old maps. But maybe, having some more creative maps, like how we see in Black Ops with Nuketown or Hijacked, things might become more interesting. Okay, I have noticed that I'm talking about an FPS game, and I have yet to talk about the weapons, so allow me to explore them a little bit. At first, you will start with a small selection of weapons, and as you level your account, more weapons are available to you. Not only that, but each weapon has its own level, so the more you use, the more attachments it unlocks. Not much to say, I think this is a standard design and overall pretty fun, since it gives a little bit of excitement every time you level and unlock a new weapon. Having something new to experiment with. Also, because the gameplay is not that hard, with basic vertical control being enough to hit a lot of shots, it also means that there's hardly one weapon that outshines another and comes down more to a personal preference. Some weapons have better damage but a lower rate of fire. Others have high damage and a higher rate of fire but a smaller clip size. Other weapons have bad recoil control when aiming but good handling and hip-fire accuracy, allowing you to shine in close quarter and so on. Depending on the playstyle you have, there is a vast selection of weapons that will feel right for your preferred way to play, and with a really neat weapon customization to adjust even further. The most fun I had was exploring all the weapons and finding the ones I liked, leveling them up, and then finding the most optimal build by messing around with attachments to focus on the stats I prefer. And with the fact that some weapon parts include or exclude the use of other parts, it feels like there's a good depth to be found in the system. Of course, eventually you'll find your preferred weapons and parts, making these elements a little bit stale. But I guess this is true for any game you want to play optimally, as you'll stick to the one that works better for you. So, editing Gazzose here. While I was working on this video, they announced a lot of new things, but I wanted to highlight the new operator and warfare maps. The new operator looks busted for warfare, so I'm happy. It has a grappling hook and a really strong shield, allowing him to recover falling allies, take enemies out of their comfort spot, and push the front line. Something that I felt missing and that was really hard in some scenarios, so having an operator to help with that is insane. Also, I'm happy that they are doing more creative operators, that they are not scared of taking risks, since a lot of people are already saying the character will be broken, and that's a good indication of how unique and insane his abilities look. And the new map looks fantastic. I complain about some of them looking generic, but the new ones have a lot more charm, with this sort of dam construction site and railway system. And they even have some unique mechanics like building cover that was not present in other maps. And it seems they are introducing more vertical segments to the map, which is something that I always enjoy, that were present in the current maps, but you could still feel like there were room for improvements. I'm happy to recommend this game since it looks like it has a bright future. For my closing thoughts, let me say that I truly recommend this game. I hardly have fun in FPS games, so finding one that is free and that has every element I loved as a child was a really good thing, especially since it allowed me and my friends to find a casual game that we can play anytime. But I can't promise you that you will love this game and play every single day, because that's just not how I approach FPS games. Also, the game ran really well on my PC, and I'm definitely lacking in some parts, as some other recent games like Marvel Rivals are running like garbage, so I believe the game is accessible for many people to enjoy. I hope you enjoyed the video, and a subscription is always welcome, since the number of subscribers incentivize me to continue creating videos. Also, I have a Patreon, and it's there where you'll be able to receive the most amount of updates. You can become a member for free, and most of my posts are for everyone to see. But if you have a spare coin to subscribe, even in the cheapest tier, know that it will be extremely appreciated. Thanks, and until next time.